And sisters for tuning in to another edition of the Bible Show Truth Hour here on the POET Network.
Yes.
This is part 4 of Law versus Grace.
Wow.
If you didn't get a chance to go back and watch part 3 of this lesson, I think we just blew the ship out of the water, brothers and sisters.
We're gonna let's obliterate it, Ice.
Let's obliterate it. This is part 4. We're gonna pick it up.
Hebrews 9.
Where we left off at Hebrews 9. We're talking about the law versus grace. We found out in part 3 that the law mentioned of in Hebrews the 10th chapter, which a lot of preachers like to quote when they say we're no longer under the law, we're under grace. We found out that this law was the law of animal sacrifice. Let's pick this up back at verse 15. Hebrews 9
and 15.
And 15.
Remember, in part 3, we talked about a mediator, didn't we, Ice?
We did, brother.
Who is this mediator? Go ahead.
You know what? Let's go back up to 13 since this is part 4 in case they didn't see part 3.
Go ahead.
Hebrews 9 and 13. For if the blood of bulls and goats and the ashes of an heifer sprinkling the unclean sanctify to the purifying of the flesh, how much more shall the blood of Christ, who through the eternal Spirit offered himself without spot to God, purge your conscience from dead works to serve the living God. So here, brothers and sisters, is showing you the taking away of one,
and the introduction
of another.
Wow.
Verse 15.
Yes.
And for this cause, he is the mediator of the New Testament, that by means of death, for the redemption of the transgression that were under the first testament, they which are called might receive the promise of eternal inheritance.
Now, it used the word testament, but the word testament is the same thing as the word covenant or an agreement. Man sinned. Something had to die because the Bible said without the shedding of blood, there can be no forgiveness or remission of sins. So in order for God not to destroy man, he put animal as a sacrifice to make an atonement or cover man. But it could never take away man's sin because the animal didn't sin, man sinned. So Jesus had to come and shed his blood. He is the mediator of a New Testament. So when he became the mediator of a New Testament, Black Ice, now the veil ripped, there was no more need for the killing.
We're going to read that too. Brothers and sisters.
Let's go back to Hebrews. Let's continue.
Brothers and sisters, if man had died for his own sins, brothers and sisters, instead of the animals, there may be no more men left on this earth.
Because all have sinned and come short of the glory of God.
Just think of how many millions of animals, brothers and sisters, were killed to cover the sins of man before Jesus came.
Poor animals.
And took away the sin.
Because we couldn't discipline ourselves. Because we wouldn't listen to the law, statutes, and commandments of God.
Where you want to pick this up?
Hebrews 9 and verse 19.
For when Moses had spoken every precept to all the people according to the law, he took the blood of calves.
According to the what?
According to the law. He took the blood of calves and of goats with water and scarlet wool and hyssop and sprinkled both the book and all the people.
Now, Moses gave you the 10 commandments, but man broke the 10 commandments. So instead of God killing the man, he allowed Moses to set up animal sacrifice, and the blood of bulls and goats would make an atonement for your sin, but it can never take it away. That's why we read Hebrews the 10th chapter, that those animal sacrifices was a shadow of good things to come. Now Christ came and shed his blood. Come on, Ice. Verse 20.
Verse 20. Saying, this is the blood of the testament which God hath adjoined unto you. Moreover, he sprinkled with blood both the tabernacle and all the vessels of the ministry. And almost all things are by the law purged with blood.
Now, so because it's but it was the animal blood.
And check this out, Brother Julius. And without shedding of blood is no remission.
Without the shedding of blood, there is no remission of sin. So what happened, Black Ice, at 24? Go ahead.
For Christ is not entered into the holy places, made with hands, which are the figures of the true, but into heaven itself, now to appear in the presence of God for us.
Come on, Black Ice, 25.
Hebrews 9 and 25.
Yes.
Nor yet that he should offer himself often
yes,
as the high priest entereth into the holy place every year with blood of others.
But what about our day and time, Mike? 26.
Verse 26.
Yes.
For then must he often have suffered since the foundation of the world.
Because every time somebody sinned, he would have to go back to the temple and kill and shed his blood and shed his blood on the cross and shed his blood on the cross and shed his blood on the cross. He don't have to do that no more. He did it once for all. Come on, Weiss.
But now once in the end of the world have he appeared to put away sin by the sacrifice of himself.
So how did he do that, Black Ice? How did he do that? Verse 9. Now let's go to Hebrews 10 and 9.
Hebrews 10.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
9. Hebrews 10
and it's so easy to understand. You just got to understand the word of God.
Our subject matter today is law versus grace, brothers and sisters. We're showing you, brothers and sisters, that the law that was done away with was the law of animal sacrifice. Right. So, but what about the other laws? We're still under the law, brothers and sisters.
Can I commit adultery today?
God has given us grace at the same time.
Yes.
Hebrews 10 and 9.
And 9.
And it reads,
come on, bro.
Then said he,
Lo,
I come to do thy will, O God.
Right.
He taketh away the first.
That was the animal sacrifice law.
That he may establish the second.
So when he died, that veil ripped. You were no longer under the animal sacrifice law because the animal didn't sin, man sinned. So man had to come in the flesh and die for sins.
You keep talking about this veil, Brother Julius.
Yes.
You keep talking about this veil.
It gets to it. It gets to it. Continue. Continue at verse 10.
Verse 10.
Yes.
By the which we are sanctified through the offering of the body of Jesus Christ once and for all.
And then what did he do, Black Guy? Said, but at verse 12. Verse 12.
Verse 12.
Yes.
But this man, after he had offered one sacrifice for sins forever, sat down on the right hand of God.
So now, when you sat down on the right hand of God, what did you do at verse 18, Black Ice?
Verse 18.
Yes. Once he died on that cross, what happened? Verse 18.
Verse 18, and it reads, Now, where remission of these is, there is no more offering for sin.
So now, when you sin against God, he ain't going to get on the cross for you no more. He done that already. You have to ask for forgiveness. And if you don't ask for forgiveness, it ain't going to be no animal that's going to die no more. It's going to be you, sisters and brothers, and I, if we don't repent. Because he done showed you his grace. He done showed you his mercy. He done showed you and gave you his laws, his 10 commandments, and you won't keep them. So you or I deserve to die because he didn't give it to the animals. He gave it to us because man was the one that sinned. So now you're no longer under the animal sacrifice.
Let's go to the book of Exodus, Brother Julius.
Okay.
And let's talk about what they would do with this blood. Let's go to the book of Leviticus.
Leviticus?
The 4th chapter.
Okay.
Let's go to the book of Leviticus, the 4th chapter, and let's read about when Jesus died, it was said that the veil was ripped in twain. What was this veil used for, brothers and sisters? Let's go ahead and start at verse 1. And it says, And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, If a soul shall sin through ignorance against any of the commandments of the Lord concerning things which ought not to be done, and shall do against any of them, if the priest that is anointed do sin according to the sin of the people, then let him bring for his sin, which he has sinned, a young bullock without blemish unto the Lord for sin offering.
Remember what we read in Hebrews, the blood of bulls and of goats? If anyone sin against the thing that ought not to be done, that means you have to break a law. Ice?
And it says, And he shall bring the bullock unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation before the Lord, and shall lay his hand upon the bullock's head, and kill the bullock before the Lord. And the priest that is anointed
can't be any priest. It has to be an anointed priest. Yes.
That is anointed shall take the bullock's blood and bring it to the tabernacle of the congregation. And the priest shall dip his finger in the blood and sprinkle of the blood 7 times before the Lord, before the veil of the sanctuary.
Wow. What if the whole congregation sinned, Black Eyes? Verse 13.
Verse 13. And it reads, And if the whole congregation of Israel sin through ignorance.
So now that's what you call unwillful sin. You don't want to sin willfully, sisters and brothers. Go ahead.
And if the whole congregation of Israel sin through ignorance, and the thing be hid from the eyes of the assembly, and they have done somewhat against any of the commandments of the Lord concerning things which should not be done.
Against the commandments of the Lord.
Commandments of the Lord.
Oh, that's those commandments right there, huh?
And are guilty when the sin which they have sinned against it is known. Then the congregation shall offer a young bullock for the sin and bring him before the tabernacle of the congregation. And the elders of the congregation shall lay their hand upon the head of the bullock before the Lord, and the bullock shall be killed before the Lord. And the priest that is anointed shall bring the bullock's blood to the tabernacle of the congregation, and the priest shall dip his finger in some of the blood and sprinkle it 7 times before the Lord, even before the veil.
Now, verse 20, black guys, verse 20.
Verse 20.
Yes.
And he shall do with the bullock as he did with the bullock for a sin offering. So shall he do with this, and the priest shall make an atonement for them, and it shall be forgiven them.
See, because without the shedding of blood, there can be no remission of sins.
It can't be.
Black guys, I need to go back to Hebrews chapter 10. Because the book said that if you sin through ignorance, ignorance is uninformed.
Wow.
But what if you inform, black guys?
Wow.
What if you are informed now?
Hebrews 10
and 26.
Hebrews 10 and 26.
Yes.
Hebrews 10 and 26, brothers and sisters.
Yes.
And it reads.
Yes. Read it, my brother.
Hebrews 10 and 26.
Yes.
And it reads, for if we sin willfully, after that we have received the knowledge of the truth.
Now see, there's a difference between sinning and ignorance. In other words, you ain't trying to sin purposely. You understand? Because we all going to do that. And we've all done it. But if you know better, because the book said that sin is the transgression or the breaking of the law. In order to break a law, you must know what you're doing. Come on, Ice. If we sin willfully, at 26.
For if we sin willfully, after that we have received the knowledge of the truth, there remaineth no more sacrifice for sin.
But what, Ice?
But a certain fearful looking for judgment and fiery indignation,
Lake of fire, yes,
which shall devour the adversaries.
So come on, go back to Moses. Continue. At 28.
28.
Yes.
He that despised Moses' law,
animal sacrifice,
died without mercy under 2 or 3 witnesses.
Go ahead, Ice.
Of how much sorer punishment, suppose ye, shall he be thought worthy? Who have trodden under the foot of the Son of God.
Who have trodden underfoot the Son of God, yes.
And have counted the blood of the covenant.
The blood of the covenant. The 10 Commandments was ratified by blood. And the death of Jesus was ratified by blood, sisters and brothers, because he don't change. Come on, Ice.
Wherewith he was sanctified.
Sanctified, yes.
An unholy thing,
yes,
and have done despite unto the Spirit of grace.
So, because grace abounds, black ice, shall we continue in sin? Paul said what? God forbid, didn't he?
God forbid.
You cannot sin because grace is here.
Brothers and sisters, we've given you several scriptures. We've taken you several places in the Bible. Hopefully, we proved without a shadow of a doubt. And I'll close with one of the early scriptures that we started with, 1 John 3 and 4.
What do we?
1 John 3 and 4. I'll close with this, brothers and sisters. The way we started. For those who say we are no longer under sin, no longer under the law, the question that I ask you is man still capable of sin? Is there sin still on the earth? Has sin been taken away from the earth or no? And the answer is no. Sin is still here. That's why you have all the violence, all the killings, all the murders, all the things going on this earth. And if sin is still here, let me close out with this. 1 John 3 and 4. Whosoever committeth sin,
break the law,
transgressive also the law.
Why?
For sin is the transgression of the law. If there is no more
sin
law,
right,
there can be no more sin, brothers and sisters. For those who are watching via YouTube, thank you for tuning in to another edition of the Bible Show Truth Hour. This is part 4 of Law versus Grace.